So this video is just going to be some musings that I'm having as I'm preparing for a trip to Paris in a week. Not sure if it's going to appeal to anybody, but it's just some stuff that has crossed my mind as I'm getting ready to go back to Paris and kind of contemplating some things that I studied back in college in a class called The City in Modern European History. And some things that we talked about in that class regarding the redesign of Paris in the second half of the 19th century and how that relates to rebellion and revolution in Paris. So here goes. This is actually a picture of one of my tattoos. When I say I am obsessed with Les Misérables, I'm not kidding. This is a tattoo on my left ribs, and they are Enjolras' dying words from Les Misérables: "Let others rise to take our place until the earth is free." I also have Jean Valjean's prisoner number 24601 on my right hip. I am basically completely obsessed with Les Mis. Now you may be wondering what relevance that has to Haussmann redoing Paris, but I will tell you. In the movie version of Les Misérables, the character Gavroche has a line that he doesn't have in the stage show. "There was a time we killed the king, we tried to change the world too fast. Now we have got another king, he is no better than the last. This is the land that fought for liberty, now when we fight for bread. Here is the thing about equality, everyone's equal when they're dead." And the king that he's talking about was Louis Philippe. And basically what happened is during the French Revolution, Louis XVI was executed. He was replaced by the revolutionary government, who was replaced by Napoleon Bonaparte, who was eventually exiled, brought back, exiled finally, and he was replaced by a king who was replaced by the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon III. This was after the events of Les Misérables. So at the time of Haussmann rebuilding Paris, Napoleon III was the person in power. No more kings, no more original Napoleon, but instead his nephew, who had not grown up in Paris, but instead had grown up in places that had a lot more green space and a lot less cholera. So he brought in an architect named Haussmann, and he wanted him to make Paris pretty and a lot less dangerous, with a lot fewer medieval buildings that were made of wood and subject to fire, and a lot fewer muddy roads that were going to stew with cholera, and most importantly, a lot fewer narrow alleyways that lent themselves to barricades. So those were the major predicating factors in bringing in Haussmann to redo the city. They're all relevant to Les Misérables. The events of June 1832 all had to do with what later Haussmann was brought in to do. The cholera outbreak of summer 1832 is only very briefly mentioned in Les Misérables, but very directly affected the June Rebellion. The cholera outbreak was so severe that the Hôtel Dieu hospital was completely overwhelmed, and in fact the king himself got sick and nearly died. That sowed seeds of discontent among the population and actually created conspiracy theories that the government was poisoning the water or sickening people on purpose to kill off the poor people. It helped feed the rebellion. The cholera was caused by poor sanitary conditions, and certainly the narrow alleyways that were winding contributed to the ability of people to rebel in the way that they did, and with the frequency that they did, which was nearly annually at that point. So when Napoleon III was in power, he wanted to widen the streets, create more sanitary conditions, fewer fire risks, etc., more green space like he'd seen in Switzerland, America, London. And in doing this, people would not be able to build barricades out of household furniture. In order to build an effective barricade, it would need to be so much substantially larger that it would be nearly impossible. Long, straight boulevards would allow much more easy movement of troops from point A to point B in case of a rebellion. With the invention of trains, it would allow easier construction of train stations, and it would allow easier vantage points, visibility, etc. It also would open up viewpoints to see the landmarks in the city. So these were the reasons why Napoleon III wanted Haussmann to do his renovations. In theory, everyone was fine with them. Nobody really had a problem with what Haussmann was going to do. There was no doubt that the city needed renovation. The problem